makes the one-timer. Now a shot, score, up go, and Massachusetts takes the lead.
We are back with a NewMass Minute, and we are excited. It is NCAA tournament time for the Minutemen. My name's Jay Burnham, voice of the UMass Minutemen, coming at you from just Amherst, Massachusetts. Not nearly as exciting as my broadcast partner, Nathan Strauss. He is in Fargo right now, ready for some postseason action. Nathan, how you doing, buddy?
I've been doing great, steered clear of any wood chippers so far.
All
I
good.
don't know. Have you seen Fargo? I'm assuming you
Yes.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched it on the plane yesterday for the first time, and gotta say they got the accent spot on. So apologies for the celebrity lighting here. I've got the hotel room
Okay.
special.
We're going to get to your situation in Fargo here in a second. I just welcome you back. We missed you last week. We did bring in Colin Casey off the bench. Thank him for joining us and talking puck. You were in London, so now you're in pretty much the same similar space, Fargo, North Dakota. I wanted to start this podcast by saying 5 out of 6 for Massachusetts hockey. 5 tournament appearances in the last 6 seasons. Truly something remarkable that this coaching staff, this program has been able to do. And I just wanted to allow you to kind of touch upon what that might mean, not only here for the program, but how it resonates throughout the world of college hockey and just another incredible season for this team.
Yeah, and I mean it's really 6 out of 7, right? Because
Right,
UMass,
yeah.
I think in the 5 overall spot in pairwise when the season obviously shut down come 2020. So the consistency that UMass has done this, it's up there with the absolute elite programs out there. The only other teams to do this, I think it's Denver and Quinnipiac. And Denver is Denver, and they have 2 national championships in that time. And Quinnipiac is in a weaker league, and they are the alpha dog down there in Hamden. So what UMass has done is remarkable. I mean, consistency is so hard to come by. And you think about that time frame, the last 5 or 6 tournaments, there have been tournaments that BC and BU have both missed 2 tournaments in that time. UMass has made all but the 2023 tournament. And obviously they made a national championship game. They won a national title in 2021. They're here to stay. And it's remarkable. You look at this region that UMass is in, and it's UMass, Minnesota State, Minnesota, and Western Michigan. Western Michigan's made 3 straight. And those are, the other 2 schools, Minnesota State Mankato and Minnesota, who are like perennials. And UMass is right there with them, if not further ahead than them right now.
Yeah,
so
I thought one of the interesting
great
notes here, and you get the first round matchup, and we're definitely going to obviously talk about this matchup, UMass versus Minnesota on Thursday at 8:30 Eastern time. 4 programs since 2018-19 that have had 6 20-plus win seasons. Oddly enough, Minnesota is one of the other teams in that mix. To give you an idea as how good they have been, they're kind of in a little bit of a lull. They haven't played in a long time. But before we get to this matchup, Hockey East Championship comes down to the wire. I mean, what a great tournament this was just regionally here. I know there are a lot of fans disappointed. UMass was at Boston University. Tough to win there twice in the same season. You got the overtime loss, 3-2 for a chance to advance to the Garden. I guess you were abroad. You didn't get a chance to witness this game, or were you on the edge of your seat somewhere in London yelling about UMass hockey?
While many others, late at night on Saturday were off perhaps at a pub or a club, I was sat in my hotel room at the Ibis Earls Court listening to Colin Casey and Donnie Morehouse trying to get a VPN to work to watch the second and third period in overtime. But UMass really played well in that third period. They dominated that third period. And then they had the better of overtime until the goal. And that's hockey, right?
Yeah.
I mean, UMass played well in there are no moral victories, right? But UMass played well. They played well enough to win, and you don't get a bounce. And that's the way it goes. There were no sour grapes. And I think a lot of BU fans were pretty magnanimous, whatever. They were pretty honest about, the fact that UMass could have deserved to win. And that's what playoff hockey is all about. And so you didn't make it, but heck of a national hockey championship game, though.
I know. And I think that was the thing where you're applying pressure in that overtime period. Suniev gets the goal towards the end of regulation to tie it up. And it really felt like UMass was on the verge of breaking through. And then as that happens in the 3-on-3, right, breaks out the other way. And, one of the best goal scorers is able to get the puck on his stick and ultimately win it for BU. You lost Boston College. Northeastern made a run. UConn and Maine go to the finals, and Maine needed a couple overtimes to get to the finals, and then ultimately win their first championship since the early 2000s. So, all things considered, I think if you put UMass in that Final Four in the Garden, I think you get the hometown cooking as well there. Just a little bit of a missed opportunity, but nevertheless, I think Hockey East has to be happy with how things unfolded heading into that final series.
Yeah, and it's hard not to be happy for Maine fans, right? And it's hard not to be happy for Ben Barr and Taylor McCarr as well. Like,
Yeah.
it was the first time the Hockey East Championship had left the state of Massachusetts in 20 years, which is also really, really interesting. And
Awesome.
the crowd seemed like 80%, 90% Black Bear stands, like the entire population of Midcoast and Northern Maine drove down. It was a great showcase for the league. And also, that's two programs that are, Maine has history and pedigree, but not the Blue Bloods. And
Right.
when we talk about Minnesota, Minnesota is amongst the what I would say like the five blue blood programs in the country. That would be Minnesota, North Dakota, Michigan, BU, BC. And there is another tier, the tier that UMass is in, kind of the new bloods. But Maine and UConn put on a hell of a game. And in a Hockey East this year that had so many good teams, it was, entertainment down to that final goal.
It's almost scary because of what Ben Barr's been able to kind of rekindle there in Maine. And now you're talking about a UConn team going to the tournament for the first time, and they're going to be playing Quinnipiac on Friday in the NCAA tournament, and a resurgent Maine program. And all of a sudden, you're saying, look, there's no easy games in Hockey East anymore.
And there really never have been. And
That's
especially
fair. Carv would
and
probably say, "Hey,
yeah,
man, none of them are easy," but there's
but
no teams that are kind of wounded. You think?
right, but Hockey East is SEC football. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the comparison. And the weakest teams in Hockey East are better than the median team in the country. And it's great for the league, and the coaches deserve big credit. And it's only going to get better because of the CHL players being allowed to come in. So programs that struggled this year, UVM, UNH, Merrimack, they're going to be able to bring in older Canadians, and it's going to raise the floor even more. So, look, you were basically a Northeastern upset from having a record 7 teams in the tournament. Like, this is Hockey
I was
East.
kind of rooting for chaos there, and what a performance they put on to get to the final four there. And that's probably an off-season topic that we can get into. Let's really get down to this. The four sites: Manchester, Fargo, Allentown, and Toledo. A little bit further than UMass was last year here in the Commonwealth. You're in Fargo. Set the scene for us. What are you looking at? Is it a budget inn or is it a Marriott? Where do we put you up? And what's the rink gonna look like?
We're in a home two inn and suites long-term stay. The team is
Oh,
right across
kitchenette,
the way.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, right next to me. The team is in the Hilton Garden Inn right across the way, but they were sold out. Fargo, unsurprisingly, not a destination town unless you're here for maybe NDSU or NDSU football, but it's very different. I drove down to South Dakota today, and it was 70 miles straight, flat. You can see basically forever. I was listening to some George Strait and some, Waylon Jennings and Merle Haggard to kind of get in the mood for being out in the big country, but it's very flat. It's very expansive. I'm going to the rink in about 45 minutes. I'll be able to set the scene more there, but it is hockey country. My flight from Minneapolis here, and I took 5 flights in the last 24 hours. I'm putting up like Taylor Swift numbers. My flight was like 65% Minnesota fans, 30% North Dakota fans who were flying back from the Big Ten tournament, or rather, excuse me, from the NCHC tournament, and then me. So it's hockey country without a doubt, and I'm sure it's
And,
going to be a good
and
atmosphere.
this is a place that Minnesota is familiar with. They were here a couple of years ago. I mean, you'd have to think, and I was talking with big ticket Warren Hayden, he's out there too with the team to help distribute tickets to fans. He said, look, UMass is going to have some fans out there, which is great, especially some guys coming down, family from Canada and others that have friends of players on the team. But you'd have to think maybe an easier place for Minnesota folks to get to.
Yeah, it was a 40-minute flight from Minneapolis to get here, and shockingly, there are no direct flights from Hartford or Boston to Fargo, as strange as that may sound. So it's a bit of a journey. It's a bit of an adventure. But it should be fun. This is kind of what the tournament's all about. And UMass fans will make some noise. Western Michigan fans, the Lawson Lunatics will make some noise as well. And Minnesota State Mankato fans will show up as well. We know how passionate they are. And UMass saw Minnesota back in Springfield, which is about 40 minutes away from Amherst in 2022. So this is kind of basically repaying that NCAA debt to them.
Yeah, UMass 0-5 all time against Minnesota. That last one, it was an overtime loss 2 years ago or 3 years ago against Minnesota here in the Commonwealth. One thing I wanted to get to, Coach Carvel, we talked about that loss against Boston University, and he put this quote out post game. He said, I told him this was like the Denver game in the NCAAs last year. I was so proud of them. I think they deserve better in a tough environment. Extremely proud of UMass hockey tonight. And I think it's funny. There's been a couple of times where we've said, hey, man, that game sort of felt like the Denver game last year, which is one you really feel like you should have won, and the overtimes that didn't go your way. But things are more so breaking the way for UMass. If you look at the last 16 games, 10-3-3 for this team in that stretch, this team is playing its best hockey at the right time.
Yeah, and those three losses, one of them was at Maine when Albin Boya made that ridiculous save with 20 seconds left. One of them was in overtime in the playoffs against BU, and the other one was on the second night after beating BC on the road. I mean, UMass is, along with Penn State, still the hottest team in the country, one of the hottest teams in the country, and they've got bodies back now. Remember, in that BU game, they were playing with no Lucas Olvestad, no Daniel Yenchko. They might be available tomorrow. And I suspect we'll find out about that this afternoon, maybe.
You might, or they might hold that under wraps and then surprise Minnesota.
But that UMass, when Greg Carvel admits that he's proud after a loss, especially on a big stage, like that actually really means something. He's not one to. He doesn't put frivolous words out there.
Frivolities.
Frivolities, yeah. But I've had a long travel day.
You speak of the King's English the last couple of weeks. Yeah. Okay. We got to talk about the Hobie Baker situation. The Hobie snub, top 10 Hobie candidates were announced. Most of the top scorers in college hockey were on the list. University of Minnesota has a player that you're going to have to look out for on the top 10 finalists as well, but no Cole O'Hara. The floor is yours.
I mean,
disappointment, anger.
It's frustration. It's anger. I think that there were I would say there were about 6 locks on this of the top 10. I'm not going to name names because it's not fair. I'm not, the 10 players who were named were all excellent, but I think Cole O'Hara was more excellent than some of them. You're looking at a guy who is amongst the leading point scorers in the country, who plays on the penalty kill, who plays on the power play. He blocks shots. He scores goals. He scores meaningful goals. Like, not all of his goals are power plays. He had 10 more goals than one of the forwards on this list. And he's doing that on a UMass team that was in the toughest conference in the country and was, top 12 in pairwise. The character aspect of the Hobie Baker Award is really important. Hobie Baker himself was obviously a Princeton alum who was shot down, I believe, during World War II, perhaps, or World War I. And character was a really big part of this award. And he has that character, right? Like, he's a high character individual. And I really share the frustration, especially when you look at maybe a couple of the players who have good numbers on this team, but maybe it's hard to keep out the leading point scorer in the country. But he had 13 goals. Cole O'Hara had 10 more. Like, it's not. If you asked me who I would want on my team, it would be Cole O'Hara.
Yeah, I think, we were kind of beating the drum. Hey, his points are up there. And then he had that play. God, I can't remember what game it was. Where
it was the main game, the
main game.
Goal.
Yeah, he blocked. He's on the penalty kill. He single-handedly blocks the shot, beats everybody down the ice, and scores the first shorthanded goal of the season for UMass. And I thought, okay, that's one of those plays that will, like, not only get you the highlights and the attention, but showcases all the things that you can do in what is primarily a team game, but how an individual can take over and make a difference And I thought that was the one that was like, okay, he's got to be at least a finalist. And that's not the case. And the other thing for UMass is if you think about it, four players with 30 plus points on
I
the
think
team this year.
five now. I think there's
Five
five.
players with 30 plus points on the team. And so it's not as if he's he's there, but he's also got players that he's getting involved in the action, and he's sharing the scoring, which I think is harder to do at times. And I thought that might be one thing that would lead him to be one of the finalists as well.
I think it's just hard too because he is the exact kind of story that college hockey should want to showcase, which is a drafted player in the middle rounds who struggles to find footing the first couple of years and then blossoms in year three and becomes one of the national leaders and the best players in the country. That's the kind of story, someone finding their voice, someone developing in the room. That is what makes college hockey special. And there are a lot of first round talents, on this Hobie Baker list. You're looking at, first rounder in Steve Buium, first rounder in Isaac Howard, first rounder Ryan Leonard, first rounder Jimmy Snuggerud. But then the other players, it's guys like him. And I just feel like, maybe it's motivation for him if he decides to come back next year. But
Yeah.
it's tough. You wanted it for him, you wanted it for the program.
All right, let's talk about the game. So this pod that UMass is in Fargo, a win will get you to play the next day against Western Michigan or Minnesota State. First on the docket, Minnesota. You mentioned the matchup a couple of years ago here in Massachusetts. Let's scout Minnesota. You mentioned Hobie Baker finalists that they've had in Snuggerud. What do you see about this team, and how do you think this matchup plays out?
I mean, they've got a lot of talent. There's no doubt about it. They've got four first rounders. They've got Snuggerud. They've got Matty Wood, who UMass saw when he was at UConn. Oliver Moore, first rounder for Chicago a few years ago. Sam Renzel is one of the best defensemen in the country. They've got a couple of injuries, which is really unfortunate for them. One of their leaders in the room, Aaron Huglin, their third line center, is out for the year. And one of their fourth liners, August Falloon, which is a fantastic hockey name, also out for the year as of last week. But the big thing for me is they've got plenty of talent. It is really hard to play a tournament game after being out for 17 days.
Right.
It's a huge disadvantage. And UMass has a goalie edge, without a doubt. They've used two goalies this year in Liam Soulier and Nathan Airy, both of whom have numbers that are pretty good, a 228, a 242, and a 918 and a 902. But their better goalie, Liam Soulier, who started more games, got pulled in the first game against Notre Dame. And then they went to Airy on 3 straight nights.
So that's in the Big Ten quarterfinals where they play best 2 out of 3 to advance. And I think disappointing for Minnesota, they lost 2 out of those 3. I think the last one was 4-1 final score. They're 8-7-2 since January the 10th. And as you mentioned, they've had to sit out a very, very long time, which might be beneficial to get the players that are, being dinged up back. Not disparaging what they've done, but probably not at the peak of what they're capable of in recent history in the last couple of weeks for this team.
Yeah, and look, they're an incredibly talented team, both in terms of their first rounders and then guys like Connor Kurth, he's plus 31. The only areas that they don't show up in big are their penalty kill, which is bottom 10 in the country. But offensively, they can really score, and they've got so much high level talent that their top 2 lines are, on par with UMass's top 2 lines or BC's top 2 lines. But the only positive is UMass has seen teams like Minnesota this year, teams like BU, teams like BC. And I think this is an even matchup. I really do. And, it's the 2-3 game in this pod. And obviously Minnesota was a 1 seed until the final couple of games. But I'm really excited. I think these two teams played an overtime game back in 2022. And that was a team that had, for Minnesota, that had, the likes of Brock Faber, Jackson Lacombe, guys who have gone on to become very, very good all-star caliber NHL players. And this year's Minnesota team looks pretty similar, and UMass looks pretty similar as well. Yeah. So I'm really excited for this. It should be, one of the most entertaining games of the opening round.
Your top seeds, BC, Western Michigan, Maine, and Michigan State. One note, BC will play Bentley, who gets their first NCAA tournament appearance in their program's history. We mentioned UConn with their first tournament appearance. They'll play Quinnipiac. It starts with Boston University on Thursday at 2 against Ohio State. Maine will take on Penn State, Providence, Denver, BC, Bentley for the for the Hockey East matchups. To be determined if you do win, when you'll play on Saturday. That'll be a TV pickup time.
Yes. And but you do have the extra day. So everyone plays Thursday and then everyone is off Friday, or you play Friday and Sunday.
Right.
So it's nice to stagger it a little bit for the players as well as for us to, rest our voice in theory and, get some sleep.
Or celebrate in Fargo, North Dakota. It'll be a lot of
Jay,
fun.
I bet you would love Fargo, North Dakota. I know you've been
I'm
to
sure I would. I love the outdoors. I see pictures of Big Sky Country, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I could just disappear.
fly fishing. I was listening to Wide Open Spaces
You
by the
could
Chicks on
just
the car ride. I
find
was
me a
like,
cabin that has solar panels and a thing of books. I'll be all right.
and some IPAs probably.
This is my yeah.
But,
All right, we got a watch party here. We'll be listening to you if I'm driving around, but we will be at the Hangar Pub and Grill. Come on and join us. Watch party 8:30 for puck drop. We'll be there before that to hang out and have some pops and visit with some UMass folks and talk hockey and celebrate this season and hopefully a couple of more wins for this team. Nathan, enjoy the time out there, my friend, and hopefully we'll get to do another one of these next week with UMass still playing.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun this year, and hopefully, this weekend is what UMass fans long for. But this is why we play, right? Like this is what it's all about.
UMass, Minnesota,
Inn and Suites in Fargo, North Dakota.
Let's go! All right,
I could not be happier.
I cannot wait. He is Nathan Strauss. I'll have the action on WHMP and the Varsity app starting at 8:00 with the Milton Cab pregame show. We'll be at the Hangar at 8:30 on Thursday night to have the watch party at the Hangar Pub and Grill. Until next time, my name's Jay Burnham saying, go UMass. We'll see you from Amherst.